This podcast will take a closer look at Giovanni Battista Piranesi's striking etchings of the Eternal City in the Hatton Gallery's Power of Place exhibition. This podcast will take a closer look at Giovanni Battista Piranesi's striking etchings of the Eternal City in the Hatton Gallery's Power of Place exhibition. When you look at this 18th century etching by Giovanni Battista Piranesi, you might think that you're looking at a view of Rome. The work is, after all, the frontispiece or title page to Piranesi's Vedute di Roma, or Views of Rome. However, on closer inspection, you'll see that the scene is more fantasy than reality. Crammed with ruined temples, broken statues, and skyscraper columns that rise to dreamlike heights, blotting out much of the turbulent, cloud-filled sky, this is not a view of Rome as it is, or ever was. When Piranesi travelled to the Eternal City, he felt a sense of duty to preserve the ruins of Rome and immortalise the city. He wrote, "When I first saw the remains of the ancient buildings of Rome, lying as they do in cultivated fields or gardens and wasting away under the ravages of time, or being destroyed by greedy owners, I determined to preserve them forever by means of my engravings." To the 18th century travellers for whom Piranesi produced his etchings, they represented the Rome of their dreams. During this period, the Eternal City was at the centre of a wave of interest in antiquity, and throughout the 18th century, a steady stream of wealthy young men from Germany, France, and Britain made their way to Rome on the Grand Tour. The gap year of the 18th century, the Grand Tour was intended to broaden the horizons of wealthy young aristocrats, exposing them to languages, geography, and the culture of classical antiquity. When Piranesi moved from his home city of Venice to Rome in 1740, he entered into a long tradition of topographical drawing, which had existed in Rome for nearly 200 years. In the 18th century, the market for these veduta, or views, was more extensive than ever before. Exact representations of the ruins and monuments of Rome had fallen out of fashion by the middle of the century, and less specific, more elegant compositions of unspecified ruins were in vogue. Recognising that in Rome much of the wealth was in the hands of its foreign visitors, Piranesi used his talents to create a new style of veduta, the tamed grandeur of which held enormous appeal for the travellers. Etchings like this frontispiece demonstrate the combination of architectural precision, painstaking archaeological investigation, and wild imagination that made Piranesi so popular among grand tourists, not only in the mid-18th century, but for many decades beyond.